Thank you, Lindley and Kevin and the committee for enabling this opportunity for me to introduce you to the consultation draft and the whole consultation period of the music study design. And before we, as I begin to share my screen, I will, okay, I think it's working. I'd like to, before I begin, acknowledge the traditional owners on the many lands on which we are meeting. And for me, that's the traditional custodians of the Kulin Nation. And I'd like to acknowledge and pay respects to the elders past, present and emerging. And I'd like us to celebrate the continuation of a living culture of First Nations people who continue to tell their stories in music and dance as they have for thousands of years. So how I'd like to approach this is to share with you a little insight into how or why the studies are reviewed and the reasons for the current review. Some of you have experienced a number of study reviews over the years. For others, it will be a first time, but I'd like to just talk about the process. If I could. There we go. So why is the study reviewed? VCE studies are accredited usually for 5 years, and then they must be reviewed and renewed. The approval is then submitted for approval to the VRQA. And that's the sort of, it's a legal document really in the end. And music is published as a group, as in one book, as a group of studies. So currently we've got music performance units 1, 2, 3 and 4, music investigation units 3 and 4, music style and composition units 1 to 4. So through the life of a VCAA study, a VCE study, there's a cycle which runs for all, whatever subject it might be, and it runs for the length of the study. So when this studied, when musics were renewed for 2017, there were focus groups in 2017 and 18 that talked where particular people talked. I wasn't there for those, but they're in the, they're in the file, and there was some documentation of just some thoughts that people had in the first couple of years of the study. Also in the first, well, all through the study, we have the coursework audits. So the school assessed coursework is audited and I think every school pretty much that offers a particular subject is audited in the first couple of years of that study. So that gives a pretty good picture of how teachers are coping with what's going on and if there are any issues. So some of the information, it's part of that monitoring, comes from audits. And if things are continuing to be issues right through to the 4th or 5th year of the 4th year of the study, then you know that there's probably something that needs tweaking there. In 2019, which was the 3rd year, there was a monitoring survey done where students, teachers and any interested people, and that information was used as well. And I can say that's, some of the information comes from that monitoring survey. Then there's also data that's gathered from the VCAA, from the records, student records, results, that sort of thing. You would know as teachers that you get a lot of statistics on your studies and so on. And of course, on the back end of that, there's also a fair amount of data gathering from the VCAA side, which gives us, various pictures of of how things are going within studies. And then there's benchmarking, curriculum benchmarking and assessment. And so from other states and international senior secondary courses. So that's work that's carried out by both curriculum manager and exams unit as well. And so the other states were looked at, and some overseas jurisdictions as well. And so based on that, issues are then identified. And in our particular, the issues that were identified for music, for the music studies, one was quite a new one, because it's actually a specific question that is now asked of all studies, and that's how it flows on from the F to 10 Victorian curriculum. Because that's a relatively, well, the Victorian curriculum is just around about the same age as the music studies, I think, because this year you would know that that ACARA is currently reviewing the national curriculum, and I would imagine that Victorian curriculum would follow on as it did last time, probably fairly, much from that. So you would expect that it would be almost time for a Victorian curriculum review. So we need to have a look at how our studies go from what's in the Victorian curriculum into the senior years. It was also quite clear that the studies that we were offering, in most part, were not particularly equitable for all students across a range of schools and settings in Victoria, because much of it sort of has relied on, private instrumental lessons, that sort of thing. There are differences, particularly that were noted in music performance in the current study, in that both in the way that students selected for solo or group, for instance, they're different kind of conditions, although they were assessed under the same in the same study. And so the ranking that would go on is in that same study, even though there were some considerable differences between some of the cohorts. Another one of the particular issues is that none of our studies really sat well for digital music, and that's certainly increased. There have been applications for alternative instruments for all sorts of time, but the applications for things like Ableton Live have been more considerable over the last few years, and there, as an alternative instrument, the criteria for assessment and doesn't allow particularly well for that. So that was important. And then over a number of years, declining student numbers pursuing music as a VCE study was a concern, and that was something that was highlighted in when we were looking at other states and jurisdictions about the sort of percentage of students who might actually pursue a music study in years 11 and 12. I know in a lot of schools you might have loads of students participating in co-curricular music, but not necessarily in the music studies. And there are many reasons for those things to happen. The sheer number of studies offered in the VCE could be one of them, as opposed to some other states. But then there are also other issues as to what we need. We really should have more students. If there are lots and lots of people playing and playing music, why aren't they in our music studies? So they were some of the questions that were asked. So the process then goes for the VCAA. You decide, the VCE unit decides on whether it should be a major or a minor review. That looks a little bit like something else. So major or minor review determines if there's going to be anything considerable considerably sort of changed in a review. It does need to be a major review. And because all of our music studies are in the one book, it meant a review of everything was called a major review. And so a panel was appointed or two panels actually were appointed from people who applied. And the panels have to be, there's a formula for representation of teachers, industry representatives, school type. Oh,
Sit.
I must have some competition with somebody who's not sitting. Okay. Sorry, the panel is appointed, so we need representatives from all sectors and from regions. So there's quite a lot, so lots of people apply, not everybody can be appointed, but there is a sort of a pattern, a plan of appointment, so that state education, high schools, Catholic schools, independent schools are all represented and that sort of thing as well. So actually two panels were appointed, but they actually ended up coming together because of the way that the review progressed, and it seemed like it wasn't really just performance on one side and composition on the other. It was more complex than that. And study writers were appointed and then meetings were held over a longer period than much longer period than usual, because we were stopped from having any further meetings once the first lot of lockdown happened last year, and then we were just about to get back to it, and then there were other reasons that things were stopped again. So the draft study design was submitted to various committees within the VCAA under the direction of the VCE unit and the unit manager, and then eventually it was approved for consultation. And so this is the consultation process that's now happening. So we've now entered this, so all of that's happened, and here we are with consultation. So you've got until August the 3rd in this consultation period, which is a really nice long time to have the opportunity to look and consider and think about the issues that I'm raising tonight, perhaps as things for you to think about, to consider when you're pondering your response or whether to write one. So the questionnaire is out there, and I will say a little bit more about that because there's some, I'll say something about that at the end. The independent reviewers are also sent opportunities to feedback on some very specific questions that the VCAA asks them, and those independent reviewers are teachers currently teaching. Normally just have one for a study, but now because of the extent of ours, we've got 6 reviewers. So teachers currently teaching studies, academics with background in, with the knowledge of the senior secondary system, teachers with knowledge of other senior secondary systems as well. So a lot of consideration goes into those things. Then after August the 3rd, the study writers and the panel will consider the feedback, and the draft study will be refined and finalised. And I would hope that we might have a final sign off on that from that's from the board of the VCAA by the end of 2021, and it goes to the VRQA for to be confirmed. And 2022, that's not when it starts. I did have somebody in a panic yesterday thinking that it starts next year, but no, we've got implementation workshops that will happen, and a lot of those now are happening online, as on-demand videos online, so that I think many of you would remember going to those kind of implementation workshops. I think I've been involved in some myself in various parts of the state, and having to turn up to find out anything. But I think there's much more of the on-demand videos, and then a webinar where you're already informed and can ask questions. So that process is being improved all the time. Advice for teachers is written. Exam specifications and sample exams come out in 2022 for the start, so that the study is all beginning units onwards, everything starts afresh in 2023 is the plan. Now, examinations, I just want to mention now that they're not up for discussion yet. You'll be able to see the balance of percentage balance of what's proposed for school assessed coursework and for exams. That's all outlined in the draft, but the actual, what's the exam specifications up there and sample exams and that sort of thing. That's not part of this process. So it is an amazing opportunity. I've found some of the working with the panel and the study writers has led to some of the most challenging and is often exhilarating conversations about music and about education that I've had the opportunity to experience. It's been really exciting, and I hope that perhaps some of the things that come out of the draft study design might encourage you to have some of these interesting conversations too. We do have different pathways to becoming a musician or to understand our own understandings of being a musician, and I'm only too aware that my own pathway was extraordinarily traditional, and that's not saying that that's a bad thing, but it was a very particular pattern. But then I've been influenced by other educators that I've met on the way. I've encountered places. I've taught in different settings and different age levels, and my own music making experiences have also led me to perhaps think about how other people also learn and experience music. I remember being my very first probably workshop that I did when I was a young teacher was turning up to something that Richard Gill did for us, and we were doing the Dorian mode, something in the Dorian mode, and then we were all playing away on Orff style instruments, and he pointed at me and said, "Improvise." And I went, "Oh, what's going on?" I'd never been asked to improvise in my life. That was something that was a totally new experience, although I'd come through a very traditional pathway, and that was probably a pretty simple thing to do, but it was quite challenging for me at that time. And likewise, my sister, who's a bit younger than me, did music as well. She's only a couple of years younger, but she went to La Trobe and did the music at La Trobe, which was a very different course to the Melbourne Conservatorium that I did. And I saw, completely different ways of understanding about music. So I just want just think about those varieties of pathways, of settings, of ways that we do it. And I'm extraordinarily privileged in my position now to see and talk to teachers from very many, very different settings that we have in music education in Victoria. And the curriculum is for all of those people. So the curriculum, just to remind everybody, is the content, where the VCAA prescribes the content, but teachers work out the pedagogy, the how to teach it. That's your decisions. We don't write the pedagogy. So getting to the study design, I really implore you to read the introduction. I know you kind of you want to know what's in my subject bit, but do please read the introduction. It underpins, I think, the whole subject, the whole concept of the suite of subjects. There's the scope, the rationale, and the aims. And if you take the time to read that, you find that it might be part of that discussion that really challenges you on some of the ways that we express things. The little comment, the musicianship is defined, and looking at that little description of what musicianship is, and thinking about how we build on what students bring to the study, and then it's developed, it's worked on, and different people will come with different skills and backgrounds. They will have already experienced many different things. So what we're trying to do is to develop this whole package of musicianship, but it might develop in many different ways and different orders. There's some lovely description of artist and audience. Have a look at some of these diagrams. You know, they really do help to make a little bit more sense of the whole study. The structure of the study is one that I think is very key to. That's outlined in the introduction. So we have music units 1 and 2, which is common. There is only one music unit 1 and 2, and it develops. It then branches out into 4 different unit 3 and 4 studies. So they're separate unit 3 and 4 sequences. So students could choose any of those, and you know, a number of them. We've called music units 3 and 4. So we've got music as the name of the study, and we've got music units 3 and 4 being a study where, well, I'll talk about what that's a new one. We've got music performance, which we're calling music performance contemporary, and then music performance repertoire. Not sure if they're exactly the right titles for them or if they convey the right things, but that's what they're called in the draft study. So we, welcome your feedback on those too. And music composition is there in units 3 and 4. So that's our structure. For some reason I can't. Here we go. So assessment is there, and you can see side by side the summary of the scored assessment in all the unit 3 and 4 studies. So you'll see what percentage is school assessed, what percentage is exam assessed. So that gives you a bit of a background of that. So that's where you find it. You also find the cross-study specifications. And the terminology that I want to particularly draw your attention to is responding, analysing, performing and creating, because they're actually the 3 areas of study which are used in all the units in the whole package. So they're the organisers, if you like. They mean slightly different things. Responding in composition is slightly different from responding in performance and so on. But basically, we're looking at responding to music being what you hear, and whether that be works of music that you're listening to for the effect that they're immediately creating, or whether it be oral type listening to more very specific things that you might be then responding to. But things that you do kind of pretty much immediately, whereas analysing is much more the in-depth thing where you're really looking at the perhaps visually and orally, perhaps, at what's going on, performing, of course, and creating as the other areas. So in they're part of the cross-study specifications, but you will see that terminology a lot. Music elements, concepts and language, there are some lists there that are neither prescriptive nor exhaustive. It's not everything that's about it. It's not a checklist that you have to tick off, but it gives you the whole, depending on what study that you're in, what music that you're dealing with, some of those, that's the kind of language that you would be using. And with musicianship at the centre of this, you've got the elements and concepts and language, compositional devices, the style and the context, and then we've got all of those things through responding, analysing, performing and creating. So when it comes to actually writing a study design, there are some constrictions on that. There are rules for all of the studies. So, and the anatomy of the design is such that it's divided into units, then areas of study, then outcomes, then key knowledge, and each outcome has a key knowledge, key skills, and then there's the assessment of outcomes. So in each unit, you find some areas of study, and in the music ones, in units 1 and 2, there are 4 areas of study, and in units 3 and 4, there are 4 areas of study in the one that's called just music, but there are 3 areas of study in the performance studies and in composition, because they leave out the other one. So they're kind of developing a specialty rather than a continuation. Before we go further, I just want to, having thought about that there are rules for a study design, there are also kind of rules overall. So what can you do for music education? What can we do for it in terms of what we've got now? You need to think about that there's a big picture. So that's like the whole of musical life in Australia, how you would like it to be, how it is now, you know, what experience that parents come to with their, and what they bring to their own children, what tertiary institutions can do for pre-service teachers, how are they handling it. That they're bigger picture things. They're outside of the scope of what we can do in VCE, but they're important nevertheless in the big picture discussion. But there are some things that that we can't change just with a study design, for instance. There's the Victorian curriculum F to 10, and as I said, that is it's an important part, because what's in that really helps to direct what can happen in VCE, in senior secondary. But we can't change some of those things at the moment if we wanted to. But the VCE music studies is where we can realistically, I suppose we're wanting to find what can we realistically expect from students, realistically expect from teachers, and given their sort of their total circumstances. So that's kind of what we're looking for. That whole, we can't do everything. We can't do that big picture stuff, but we do need to be mindful, and then just do the best we can with the situation that we have for students who are approaching year 11 and year 12. So units 1 and 2 music, that it does provide a logical extension from the Victorian curriculum and provides a sort of pathway to each of the proposed unit 3 and 4. There's a set curriculum, but within that there's flexibility for schools to consider the cohorts at their schools. There's a bit of everything. There's the 4 areas of study, and they will continue into units 3 and 4 music as well. So the key knowledge and key skills in units 1 and 2 are a baseline, really, if you like, but many you know, there's nothing to stop teachers from extending students further, and particularly you probably would be looking to see which direction they're likely to go in Unit 3 and 4 as well. So Units 1 and 2, they look at music through an overarching kind of title. So organisation is the first one for Unit 1, and Unit 2, the effect in music. Each of these are explored through each area of study. So responding, that's responding to what you hear in the music that you're listening to, but also in the finer grained areas of the ear and what it can pick up, what you can remember, what you can begin to internalize as well. So all of that oral, those kind of oral skills would be there. The analysing is the deeper looking in, both visual and oral. Could be in notation or conventional notation. However, it could be a variety of ways of looking at things. And remember, we're looking at this as being accessible to people with from any instrumental or any sound source really, so that we're looking, if you're they might be using a digital audio workstation for their performing and creating, and the analysis that they might need to do there would be slightly different from the sort of analysis that somebody who's playing the violin or the guitar might do. So different kinds of things for the particular situation, and performing and creating, of course, as well. Unit 3, influence in music, responding, analysing, performing and creating, all 4 areas of study, but connections between music created in different times or places, so that those influences can be seen. And the skills that are being built here are preparing for Unit 4, where students study the influence in my music, their own thing. So that's a little bit more of an area of investigation where they, both through all 4 areas of study, they're choosing their own area of investigation. There's a bit more student agency in there, a bit of choice, whether they be style, performer, creator, genre. That's we've proposed an externally assessed task. Some of you will be familiar with this from the EAT, the acronyms of everywhere. So the externally assessed task, or EAT, is something that is externally assessed by VCE, VCAA assessors, just as currently the music style and composition is assessed in this way. It's externally assessed, but and so it assesses. In this particular case, we're proposing that for music, it would assess outcomes 2, 3, and 4, and would have a folio of documentation, a performance, and original work. And there has been a lot of thinking into knowing that, and I've had some comments from people too about the amount of, we really want this to be something that students do. So the performance and their creative work, what kind of work that might be, is an important part of it. But you want to tie it in with the responding and analysing parts. So so they have, one of the questions that I've already heard today was, is being assessed, I think mentions the idea of one piece being part of that folio, and is that enough? That's a question that you might like to feed back on, if you wanted to see something different there. So they're the kind of things that, in the view of you will have that sort of opportunity in the questionnaire to respond to those sorts of things. The performance studies as this is units 3 and 4, 2 separate studies, and each one of them, performance contemporary, as we're calling it at the moment, and performance repertoire, each catering for solo or group performers. So they need to be 2 separate studies for us to be able to, well, I think that's been one of the things that was picked up by the VCAA data and by comments from teachers and so on through the monitoring, about how there are some differences between expectations currently or experiences, backgrounds between some groups of students. So if we're creating 2 different studies, it could have gone group and solo. We used to have a group and a solo, but that would be kind of determining in the assessments. It'd be slightly different. So what we're doing here is thinking that you can be a soloist or a group person in contemporary or in repertoire. There's nothing to stop you doing both studies, because they would be different enough. They're different. They're 2 separate studies, and they have 3 areas of study: responding, analysing and performing. But they're doing those things in different contexts. So perhaps there's not a lot of change too. So in repertoire, catering for, I guess, there's a list in there of sort of orchestral and instruments and that sort of thing. So we're kind of looking at the notation-based programs. So one work could be selected from a smaller prescribed list than we have now, but one work selected from a list, and then a free choice of other works. That's the notion. It could be for solos or groups, and with any number of students being assessed, as currently, no difference there. You could have a whole group of assessed students, but at least in a solo work, at least one work has to be with at least one other musician. Could be a teacher or a student. And that, I mean, obviously in a flute exam at the moment, you have an accompanist and a student. Could be, but in a piano exam, the pianist just plays on their own, and classical guitarist. And so what we're saying is that every musician should do something with another musician. So that's where that's come from, the intention there. The responding in performance repertoire, it includes many of the current music performance key skills, and the analysing is really a re-look at the current preparing for performance. That definitely comes out of some of the audits that we have, that we would look at and see that there are people who continue to just call that the tech sack and really focus on the technical work, and not really looking at the whole other range of things that are in that preparing for performance. And I think analysing is really re-looking at that and trying to really connect it up to students' best practice in preparing and analysing their work and how they go about getting their performance ready. So the sorts of things that a musician does. In contemporary, we're looking at non-notation-based programs, more developing a personal voice in what students are doing. So no prescribed list, but students develop a statement of intention explaining the selection of works and how that's developing their personal voice. So it could be solo again or group, and it must include one work that with stylistically appropriate improvisation. Now that's going to mean many different things in different styles, and it's going to mean different things for different instruments as well. But that's one area of difference with this study. Responding focus is on in a contemporary context. So the skills aren't necessarily that different, but it's the way that they might be expressed that by the student that might be different. And analysing, again, a contemporary focus on preparing for the kind of performance that they're doing. So if I know we've thought about this right through the process about how things can happen in one classroom, as they so frequently do in music classrooms in senior secondary. Responding is not vastly different between the two cohorts, but the way that it would be expressed and assessed is different. The analysing, there'll be different materials and approaches, but so too is the current music performance when you have a variety of instruments in your class. So that shouldn't be too much different at all, really. It's got to be expressed differently in the different studies to allow them to be separate, but kind of the task is for a teacher probably quite similar, and in performing different sorts of approaches to programs, but so much in common as currently is the case if you've got a variety in your classroom. So it's not so different, and the organising strands would help in that way. And certainly that's one area that I would see in implementation that would want, where I'm sure teachers would be wanting to have some particular assistance in how you could structure that sort of thing together. So it's certainly been thought about. It's not just out of the blue. Music composition, units 3 and 4. The areas of study, again, responding and analysing, but this time composing rather than performing. So just the 3 areas of study. And it's very similar to the current music style and composition, but the analysis of other works in Unit 4 has been removed so that on a workload issue, because the composition component, the EAT, increases to 50%. So it has parity with the performance studies. The study has also been broadened to properly embrace digital composition as well. So that we're looking at that as being very viable in that study too. So we are genuinely excited at the possibilities opened up by these proposed changes. The music studies have looked pretty much the same for quite a long time. And although it is a different look, it's a restructure and an opportunity, I think, to be more inclusive rather than throwing out curriculum content. That's certainly the intention. Many of the key knowledge and skills remain, but they're treated in different ways to accommodate the newer developments in digital tools, for instance. We know that what's there so far is not perfect, and we want you to contribute to the debate on that through the questionnaire. And I will say the questionnaire it's enormous. It looks enormous. If you're responding to everything, you get a huge book of pages virtually. It's on Qualtrics. It's when you sign up for it, it works best on Chrome if you've got the choice of browser, and it remembers where you're up to, where you've got up to. It gives everyone who's accessing it 40 sort of general questions at the start, and gives everyone the new music units 1 to 4 in detail. So going through each unit where it says respond to this one, respond to that one. If you're wanting to respond to the whole study in that way, you need to select all the units and say that you're teaching them, even if you're not, so that it opens up all of the other possibilities. I think that the VCE unit thought, oh no, you won't be interested in those things, but you are, if you've already started the survey, you can return to that page and continue to select some more, and you should be able to, that should bring them up again. Or you can start a new study, a new survey on another device, because it does remember the one that you've done. Unfortunately, it's just will keep. So if you're wanting to start a new survey, you'll need to sign up on another device. But if you've got any problems whatsoever dealing with all of that, then don't, just email me if you've got difficulties with responding. Responses can be as brief or as extensive as you choose. And I just really want to assure you that the consultation is a real process. We will be looking at all of these things. We need to. And your assistance is also, I ask for your assistance to alert other teachers to the new possibilities too, because there are schools out there that currently don't offer. I think probably most people who are here today would have experience with current studies, but we want to say out there are some more opportunities there too, and we'd love to hear from those teachers as well if they think that that's something that their school could embrace. So I think that's pretty much my, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I can see all your beautiful faces. Well, some of them. There's 11 pages of you in my screen. That's amazing. So I can't see everything. Kevin, would you like to?
All right, we've got a few questions that have come up, and quite a lot of conversation that is appeared in the chat. Actually, a lot of that conversation is the sorts of things which need to go into the consultation questionnaire. So if we could just deal with specific questions now rather than comments, and sort of huge vague opinions about things. If you can actually have questions about the consultation process, if we could stick to that. And I've written down the names. We can start with, in no particular order, Richard O'Shaughnessy, you had a couple of questions. Go.
So my first question was just about scaling, whether there's a thought about how the two streams might be scaled differently.
That will be a question for. That's something that I think we've got kind of a situation, probably not unlike some of the range of studies in maths, for instance, where there are there'll be different cohorts will do different things. Now that this scaling doesn't happen, but with the VCAA, I mean the ranking happens, but and that sort of thing. But the scaling is a VCAA process. So I can certainly attempt to find out more about how that they will arrive at that, but we don't know that yet.
Okay, Matt Pankhurst, go. He may have left. Let's scoop. Kate O'Callaghan, you had a few questions. If you could perhaps focus on your more pressing one. Kate O'Callaghan.
I'm not sure. I did have a question about the accreditation period, if that's relevant to be asked in this forum. Just if the study design is obviously going under such a major change, how do we envisage that sort of actually being implemented? I'm just forward thinking, if a student is doing 1-2 in the current design, and then like how will they pathway into 3-4 of the new design?
Right. Yeah, I think that's good question. But units 1-2 currently there's a lot of flexibility in units 1 and 2 for the school, and it would be probably picking up the pathway that they're likely to go to. We think that the 1-2 if you're currently doing 1-2 performance, I suppose, thinking, or I'd say if it was 1-2, if it was unit 1 and 2 in music style and composition, it would transfer very easily to music composition. Music performance 1 and 2 currently sort of feeds into both investigation and performance, and I don't think that there would be particular issues there, but you might want to be starting to think about the way that you teach and the way that you're expecting to, depending on the pathway that the students might be heading towards.
Okay, so we're envisaging that
everything does start at the same time. So
yeah, right. Okay, so we have to sort of tweak the final year of the current study design in 1-2 so that we've prepared
up to speed. Yeah, I think that's probably the sensible way to do that, because they all do roll over at the same time.
Yes, yeah.
So, and I think, probably schools will be wanting to think about how they offer music at year 10 as well, year 9 and year 10. This is something that, it's a thinking process about how you would do that, how you could sensibly do that. I know some schools have got their year 9s and 10 program based on what's in the current study design, but it'd be some rethinking. Doesn't all have to be really different, but yeah.
Okay, Paul Dooley, go please.
Yeah, I've just got a question about the process for arriving at such huge changes to what I thought wasn't particularly broken, and I'm wondering why we're fixing it, and wondering if you'd considered the difficulties that I can see happening to so many schools where we're going to be preparing 4 different or 3 perhaps streams from our Unit 1-2 class, which is probably going to be sitting in the same room at the same time as the 3 different 3-4 groups, and how on earth one educator, brilliant though we all are, is going to manage that, and whether that was a consideration by the committee.
Yeah, look, it has been considered all along, and I think we think that it may be you have to kind of rethink the way that you go about it, but that there's, as I say, the organising strands are there, and that it's possible. It's it will be not easy, not necessarily easy for teachers, but then it currently is like that as well. And I think that many of the differences aren't actually as different as you think in terms of how you would approach it in the classroom. But I do, I understand absolutely, and I think we all do, that we want some support, extra support for teachers to be able to help them work through how that would sensibly work. But every system, you just talk about it's not broken. Well, I think that some of the early points that I mentioned to you in the meeting about how it was decided to come to a major review, there were things that had to be changed. So it did need a major review, and I think all studies do this, and teachers, I know you want to do the best for your students, and that's a really important part of, look, I understand what you're saying, but I do think there was a case for some change, and I think it's not as major as it might seem by the structure. It's trying to be more inclusive or allow for more inclusivity.
Kieran McNair, quite a lengthy question, so go for it.
I think you actually answered it before, Marg, so I'll condense it super quickly. At the moment, when you have group assessment, you can have multiple students in a group as is, but the current design, at least how it's written, pretty much just says the performance exam is 20 minutes, and it doesn't say you can have multiple people assessed at once. Is that correct?
Yeah, look, no, you can have multiple, and I think those things in the study. There's a bit of debate about what belongs in the study design in terms of exam specifics and what actually belongs in examination specifications. And the intention is for group performance to be just as possible as it currently is, and in which case there would be longer. Yeah, absolutely.
I just have one other really quick one because it's a fair edge case. Last year, I had a girl who played flute and she studied classical, but she also absolutely loved contemporary music as well. So her program consisted of some Bach music and also some Chick Corea stuff and a bunch of other things as well. That doesn't really seem possible with the new study design though. She pretty much would have to pick either rep or contemporary. Is that correct?
Look, I think that there will be instances where, I mean, if we're looking at mainly a notated program, you know, and it does talk about mainly Western art music, but I think that, you know, the mainly notated program would be more geared to the repertoire side of things, whereas you know, and a range would be absolutely possible. But we're looking at what so that the student can get the best of support out of what it is that they're studying for the kind of music that they're engaging with the most. So I don't know if I think it's possible still.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, we're getting very close to 6 o'clock. I'm prepared to go a few minutes longer if you want. I've got about a dozen more questions here on the list, so we'll try to get through as many as we possibly can. We might go 5 to 10 minutes over. Is that okay, Margaret? Just to stay a little bit longer? Okay, we'll just stay a little bit longer. Can we have Lisa Sully, please?
I just glitched. I just got a glitch on the question before. I don't know whether it was answered. Can you do both contemporary and classical music performance?
Yeah, you could do, look, all of the 3-4 streams are open to all students. So yeah, there's if they wanted to do, they wouldn't be able to double dip and do the same pieces and stuff in studies, but just as you could do investigation and performance, you know, there's certainly nothing to stop you doing that.
Oh, it's glitching.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you can hear me, but
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Just a further question: where would you see music? Where would you see music theatre fitting in as something that is kind of you are very much learning the notes?
Yeah, so that would be. I would have thought that would be more into a notated stream, but look, I think there are questions like that those kind of curly ones that we need to take into account and write up. So any of those sorts of comments are good to have. And you know, as I said before, I'm not sure if contemporary and repertoire are the right names for these things, whether it's notated, non-notated, but the kind of style of what we're saying. So that would be, yeah, what we're looking at.
Okay, Julianne Sim, go.
I think my question just got answered before about the 2 streams of study in year 3 and 4 at once.
All right, thank you. Kathy Gossip, go. Not there, we'll jump down. Kathy Holt, your question, please.
One of the questions has been answered. That was about, can you do both repertoire and improvisation in different years? The other one is, could contemporary piano be considered repertoire?
Well, if we're looking at notation based, but then you'd start looking at how this they a lot of the contemporary piano also has some improvised work in there as well. So that I think you would have to think about what's the program, what the program selection is going to be. Really a tricky one again to say. But the idea would be that the language of the contemporary piano repertoire is more geared to perhaps the music language that we're sort of thinking about in the contemporary stream, but it's it's iffy.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, Amy Young, question. Not there. We'll skip to the next one. Rachel Gorman. I think you had a couple of them. If you could focus on your main question, please.
Hi. I don't really remember what my question was. I've just been engaging in the chat.
Okay.
It's all sort of getting answered, so I'm fine. Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Annalise Kerrigan. Not there anymore. Okay, and we're getting down to the end. Melissa Goodger.
Yeah, mine was about doing repertoire and contemporary at the same time. So, Marg, you mentioned that both of these Unit 3-4 subjects could be run simultaneously. Is that correct?
Well, I think that some schools would teach them in the same classroom. Yeah.
Yeah. So you kind of said that like students are able to do both of these because they are quite different, but if they're quite different, it would make it difficult for teachers to run both of those at the same time. So mine's not really a question, it's more of just like a concern.
Right, yeah, so I think when we say it's a matter of like organisation and way that you would approach teaching your class. And I think that there are many different permutations of combinations at the moment. It's a difficult one to I wouldn't be, like students would have to, if I'm talking about students doing the same study, I wouldn't have them in the same classroom doing both of the studies at the same time, thinking perhaps in separate years they might. I'm not sure if we're on the same wavelength there. I'm not sure if I've understood completely. Sorry if I'm not there. Yeah.
That's fine. Thank you.
All right, we've got 4 more. Bridget Mantelli. Bridget? Okay, we'll skip to the next one. Erin Haycox had a couple of questions. Oh, this is going to be quick. Jenny Gillen, question about folios.
Yes, I was just wondering about managing folios, especially for schools that have big cohorts, because that's a real struggle for our school, and that's just on composition. So has that been considered in terms of
I know that currently with the style and composition EAT, the portfolio that's put in is a bit, the process for doing that is fairly clunky. That's a process rather than, and I think that, what we're looking at ways that can be managed more straightforward manner. All of those things that require student work to be bundled up and sent in some way or submitted in some way is going to need a fair amount of teacher management, just as it happens in some in other any of the studies where there are submissions of works. So but I think from the VCAA's perspective, getting something that's a bit less clunky than the current one is already being discussed for currently. So with a new study, that certainly would be part of it too.
Okay, and Jenny Mathers.
I just put that in there. We can talk about that another day. It's gonna be a whole can of worms.
You know, Jenny Mathers' question was about using microphones in contemporary.
Oh. Yeah, of course. Yeah, that'll be. I mean, microphones and contemporary voice kind of match each other. I think that would be probably a given.
And last question, Lucian Murphy.
I'm sort of worried about my students that do non-Western music. We've got a lot of students at our school. How will this fit in? I'm not quite sure how that will fit in with the subjects that you've proposed.
It depends which stream that they're going into.
Right.
General music in the one that's just called music, units 3 and 4.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be anything. Could be any instrument. It's not. There's no constrictions on that. If it was, a classical, if it's notation based, then it could be an alternative instrument in the what we're calling the repertoire stream, for want of a better word. But it does. What we're really trying to do is to get things that where students can match their music, can have a, like the perfect match of the other things that they do with the study and the style of music that they're working in, in the language of the music that they're working in. So
okay, it's going to be complicated. It just sounds a bit complicated. With small classes, we have a year 10, 11, 12 class in our school. It just sounds like it's going to actually, while trying to be inclusive, we might actually have to be exclusive in some ways. I just worry about that. That's a concern.
Right. Yeah. Look, I mean, these things will take a bit of thinking through, and I understand that, and we do want to be inclusivity, but we can't have everything for everybody. But
I understand.
That we're certainly trying to make it accessible for as many people as we can through that.
Okay, right. Thank you.
A couple of more. Let's go back. Is Matt Pankhurst, are you still there, or have you gone?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, there we go.
Oh, terrific. Okay. Sorry, I'm just battling technology a little bit. Look, I'm really concerned pretty much about that, unit 1, 2. How would we be able to possibly educate students who are looking at a very, very diverse pathway into four different 3/4s from the single 1, 2? How is that going to be possible? I think it's very, very difficult if we were going to do that. At the moment, with the 3/4 music style and composition study design, I can't see that many differences with the difference between the proposed 3/4 composition study and the great differences that now exist in the other one. So just really love to grab a comment on that. And I've got one more question after that, if that's.
So we're looking at I think I sort of was talking about this before. So units 1 and 2 music. There is something there for everybody, and it's a minimum. The schools really probably need to look at their cohorts and see what direction that they're likely to go in. I can see that some schools might make decisions based on the people in their cohort and prepare them in whatever way that seems like the music 1 and 2 there's a minimum there, but there's absolutely the possibility of building in sort of more substantially in the direction that you're proposing to go. So schools have a fair amount of flexibility there.
And I think there's one more. John Ferguson, you've got your hand up. John?
Sorry, my mute button didn't work. I did have a comment about the microphones and the business about following on from Jenny, actually, I actually put a suggestion through as a VCE assessor a few years ago, suggesting that for contemporary popular voice, a particular setup should be given, and a number of centres put. After all, there are spare rooms once the VCE is underway in government schools and independent schools, and you set it up and you make sure everybody has a level playing field of what's there. They can bring their own microphone, but otherwise you supply an SM58, which are relatively cheap now, so everybody knows what they're getting, and that would save a lot of time. I didn't actually get much of a reply from that, frankly. But that would make life sensible, and you could use your microphone, and you could use microphone technique, and I have no idea why VCAA won't embrace it.
Yeah, well, I think I might have indicated that we might as a contemporary thing, but the whole aspect of the exam and the exam specifications, and they're the sort of things that you really talk about there, is definitely something to be explored as we move to that stage.
I'll send you that proposal that I put through. You might find it of use, or not.
Yeah.
All right, it's just gone 6:12. We've gone a few minutes over time. Thank you, Margaret, very much for the time you spent with us. As I said, this whole thing has been recorded, and I will edit it slightly and put it up on our YouTube channel and send you the link to that. So if you want to go back and refer to it, Margaret, will your slides be available for teachers to refer to at some stage?
I would have to double check that with the office, but
okay.
With my bosses.
So providing there are, someone just asked the question, so providing that it's approved, yes, of course.
Providing it's approved, yeah.
Okay.
I feel like most of what I've said is just really enhancing what's in the, just encouraging you to read all the, like the beginning of the document as well, and that sort of thing as well. So, and do please respond. I thank you for your interest, and I'm sure the chat's going to make really interesting reading. I haven't been able to kind of keep up with it, but yeah, thank you for your active contribution, and I hope that you continue to feedback and to do it in a way where we can get more better results for students.
All right. Thank you very much. There being no further questions or comments, I think we'll close the meeting here. And if we do need to follow this up at any stage before the consultation closes, we can certainly host another meeting and continue the discussion. But urge you to get started on that. It sounds like it can be a fairly detailed process. You can put into your response to the consultation as much as you want to. So that's really, really great that it's so open. That you can put in quite a great deal. So I think at the end of this process, we will have come up with what I think is a promising way forward for VCA Music. So I'm excited. So anyway, thanks very much. We've got a committee of management meeting, so I'm going to close this meeting right now and reopen another one. So thanks again, and we shall see you all later. Bye.